I am mining investor and editor of Resource Stock Digest, Gerardo Del Real, here with my partner, Mr. Nick Hodge, who's also an investor and the publisher of Daily Profit Cycle. This is the 224th episode of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. We're going to talk about the week that was in gold, the week that was in silver. We're going to talk about mid kind of market in uranium. We're going to talk about more exciting lithium news. Then we're going to talk about JP Morgan and, the amount of scandals that keep coming out of that outfit. But before we get into all of that, Mr. Hodge, how are you today, sir?
Not at the bottom of the cold Atlantic, so doing pretty well.
Boom, boom. Not sure if it's too soon, but we can start with that if you want. It wasn't even on our little bullet point list that we set up 2.5 minutes before we started this podcast. But now let's talk about it, man. There's something to be said about 5 very successful, wealthy people deciding that it's one thing to decide that this is the adventure you want to seek. And by the way, condolences to the family because, it's June the 22nd. It's 3:14 p.m. Central Time. And so they just announced that, oxygen is done and they found debris and they've likely all perished. So condolences to the family and their friends and other loved ones. Not to be insensitive, but, speaking just logically, it's fascinating to me that 5 very obviously intelligent, successful people decided to get on a vessel where, from everything that I read, and I take it with a grain of sand because of the media and how careless they can be, but everything I read just suggests and points to very little due diligence and very lax safety standards for what was obviously a very, very dangerous adventure. And you have to call it an adventure because this wasn't necessary. This wasn't, there was really no supervision outside of the people that were, I hate to use the word negligent because that has legal implications, but man, if I'm a friend or a family member of these people that passed, man, do I feel like there's some negligence involved. And so, yeah, I don't want to get too much into it, but condolences there. Heck of an adventure to pick. Tough way to go, man. Tough way to go. It's never fun, and that's a tough one. Any thoughts?
They died doing something exciting, which is more than can be said for most people. So kudos in that regard. Other people had gone and come back, so it's not like they were the first one to do this in this vessel. But the waiver seemed like it was pretty straightforward in mentioning that you could die. And yeah, they weren't sanctioned or supervised. And it seems like there were some, safety measures or precautionary measures that they avoided or shirked. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, I just mentioned it because everyone's talking about it this week, right? It was sort of the news story of the week. And so that's why I brought it up. But, one of the interesting things I did see, and a lot of people were talking about this, right, was juxtaposing it to the migrant boat that had sunk off the coast of Greece, and how that they were putting out a Mayday call for a day and a half before they, received sort of some help. And here you've got 5 people, voluntarily going to the bottom of the ocean versus 300 people, fleeing whatever living conditions they were in. And, not to get all political or socioeconomic, but man, the world's militaries came out to find this fucking thing at the bottom of the sea, right? And it was a private vessel that ended up helping that sinking ship in the Mediterranean. So a good moment to think about humanity and priorities and how bizarre the world is.
I'll take it one step further. And I'll share this one day on the podcast. I'm not ready to yet. I'm almost ready. But everyone knows that last year, my mother-in-law unfortunately passed in April. My dad passed in July. This was our first Father's Day, without him. And in December, I had an incident involving a very close family member in Mexico that wasn't the funnest to go through. That luckily we were able to work through and work out in a way that was safe for everyone involved, or at least everyone on my side involved. I say that to say that, we're as Americans, right? I'm Mexican American. I come from 2 Mexican parents from Zacatecas. I was born in this country. Thankful for the opportunity. Very proud of my Mexican heritage and ancestry. But we're neighbors with our neighbors in the South Mexico, and we can't even agree if people that are legitimately fleeing Mexico should have the right to legally petition for asylum, right? there is a legal process that allows migrants that are fleeing persecution, threats, kidnapping, rape, civil war, all the things that are going on in Mexico right now, which, there's large parts of the country that are failed states right now. They have 8 of the top 13 most dangerous cities in the world right now. And I think the first 7 are all Mexican cities, including, our city took number 4, so go us, right? But we can't even agree to give those people a legal process by which they can prove that they're in danger, that they are legitimately fleeing, death threats and kidnapping and rapes and extortion and all the stuff that's going on down there in a lot of Mexico. And again, like you said, you take these folks, and we got the military going out there. It's all over the news. And one is by choice and one definitely isn't by choice. And so, yeah, we could juxtapose this to a lot of things, right? I think, mining, which is, my bread and butter, and the way that I really make most of my money is investing in resource stocks, is inherently dangerous, right? And how many times do we hear of a mine collapse? And every now and then they make a movie about it. But, man, very rarely do we get any kind of intervention when something goes wrong there. And we know people are stuck underground somewhere in some mine with a finite amount of oxygen left, whatever that time is. There's usually a reaction time where if we just had the will, whether it's political will or like human will, we could actually deploy resources and get out there. We rarely do that. And so, again, the value of certain lives versus others, to me, is absolutely worth highlighting. And again, it's no disrespect to the people that passed or their family or friends, but it is worth mentioning that, those were people that, like you said, at least hopefully they passed chasing something that was exciting to them. For a lot of people, they're not chasing anything. They want a boring life. They want a stable life. They just want to be able to be free from threats and death and rapes and pillage, and very little to no help. And even if forget sympathy, many times these same people are made the scapegoats of things, right? And so it's just interesting where we're at as a society. We talk about the fourth turning often on this podcast. I can't wait for Neil Howell's book to come out. I'm really looking forward to reading that. Just kind of getting his thoughts on the cycle and what he sees for these next, 7 or 8, 9 years. Anyhow, that's my rant on that. How we value life is fascinating to me, especially from an American perspective, and especially from someone that has the perspective of, all of my friends and family back home that obviously are near and dear to me, and with events and things that are still very real and tangible in my life and have serious, consequences in my life. It's not like I'm disconnected from all of it. So anyway, that's my rant on humans and life value and all of that.
Well, yeah, it presents a good opportunity to reflect. That's why I brought it up. And to a certain extent, depending on where you were brought up, where you live, and the values that are, inherent because of that, all that stuff, it's like nature and nurture, right? Like it factors into how you feel about things. And clearly, these were productive members of society, right? Yeah. I mean, they were taxpayers, they were wealthy, they were whatever they were. I don't even know much about them.
CEOs and founders of companies.
And so, class obviously comes into it. Same with the miners, the same with the poor people of Mexico, right? It's sort of like that class system, which has been around since, time immemorial, since antiquity, right? There's always been a class, whether it's been the king or the clergy or whatever it is. There's always a lesser rung. And we see it even here in the United States, right? With, the people living in tent cities and underneath underpasses. And it's one of those eternal debates, right? Was it all their fault? Is it the government's fault that they can't succeed as society? Is it some combination of both of them? Do they deserve housing and shelter and insurance if they aren't paying into the system the same way that others are? All those sort of questions, right? So anyway, didn't mean to get so deep in the first 10 minutes of our weekly podcast here, but that's
hey,
what I
we
was
just
thinking.
gave Ford $9.2 billion to go and boost U.S. EV capacity. Yay, let's get them batteries, right? Flint still doesn't have drinking water, by the way, since we wanted to get on a rant. You got me on one now, Nick. Flint still doesn't have clean drinking water, and those are tax-paying citizens, no matter whether or not you like them because they're darker skinned or lighter skinned or poorer than you are. But Ford can just get 9.2 billion bucks, like, to go build some factories. And again, I actually agree with the Inflation Reduction Act, which, again, the comically named Inflation Reduction Act. I agree with the mission of it. I don't know if taxpayer dollars are exactly the way to achieve that. But again, if we're counterfeiting money for everything else anyway, then why not actually put it towards something that gives us a competitive advantage over a lot of our peers and helps us catch up to the Chinas of the world, which have been eating our lunch in the critical metal space. I'd much rather counterfeit money go towards a battery plant than, a defense budget, which is grossly, over bloated, right? But man, still can't find money for FLIT. Still can't find money for, just setting up a legal proceeding for people trying to live and stay alive and not be pillaged and raped and tortured and kidnapped.
I think we're ultimately going to head down the path of a universal basic income, right? A UBI, and not just because of the homelessness and things like that. I mean, people can't afford homes. You've got 30-year mortgage rates at 7%. I mean, even families with two working parents can't afford homes at that mortgage rate. I was seeing somebody complaining this week. These are kind of first world problems, but about how they used to be vegetarian and they can't.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
They can't buy the fruits and vegetables needed to sustain themselves relative to the prices for like cheap processed meats, right? Like they were saying, whenever a box of strawberries or grapes is $5 or $10, and a pack of hot dogs is 99 cents or $2 or something like that, right? And so things are getting very expensive. And you're right, we're in the middle of a generational turning, but nonetheless, you wonder what these next few years are going to look like as, inflation remains sticky high, as, real incomes continue to fall, and as, people on a shoestring budget trying to make both ends meet are struggling to pull those two ends together.
Yeah, definitely getting tougher out there. Whole long-winded way of saying, let's be kinder to each other. If you're fortunate enough to be in a position where you're comfortable, man, I can't tell people what to do with their money, their time, their knowledge, their wealth, but I certainly feel a responsibility to help those around me, provide opportunities to those around me. And that doesn't mean handouts. That just means giving people that want to work and that want to build something for themselves, helping with that upward mobility that I think a lot of our politicians and governments around the world have done a hell of a good job of diminishing that upward mobility for most people. So you happen to be in a position of wealth and then you're doing well, and if $1 million doesn't matter to you tomorrow, if you lost it or had it, maybe there's something good you could do with it. Just, pay for some college educations, pay for some vocational schools, maybe help somebody get, an employment opportunity that wouldn't otherwise have. Maybe help somebody with a down payment on a house. I mean, these are little things that for someone that could just throw $1 million out the window tomorrow and it doesn't matter, it really mattered to a lot of people. And so, yeah, be kinder, be nicer. The money doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you have it, if you don't, it can mean everything, right? So,
not sure how many of us have $1 million to throw out the window. We weren't all in Patriot at 16 cents there, Gerardo.
I didn't say I'd throw it out the window. I said I would use it to help people.
A good chance to shamelessly plug ourselves. And you know this because I was talking about it on our weekly call with our employees this week. But we've donated over $30,000 just in the past 2.5 years. With Digest Publishing.
Publishing.
Away 1% of the net revenue, and we let a different employee choose where that 1% goes every month. And so we've got a page up you can find on Daily Profit Cycle that lists out all those different causes we've donated to, and it spans the gamut because different employees are choosing. So there's child abuse stuff and domestic violence stuff and kids advancement programs and
sexual assault, foster cares,
exactly.
Animal rights shelters,
all
definitely.
That, yep. So anyway, we try to do our little part there.
I think we can all do our little part, whether it's $1 million or 10,000 or 100,000, whatever it is that wouldn't be consequential to you tomorrow if it went away from the bank account. I think maybe there's a way to allocate that to opportunities to help other people in whatever way you feel most comfortable doing that. So anyhow, food for thought. That's my plug for philanthropy. And And with that being said, we touched on a few things there. We talked on Ford getting a $9.2 billion. It is a loan, but still money being transferred from taxpayers to Ford to make an investment in our critical metals infrastructure here in the U.S. But let's talk markets. I think let's talk gold and silver, which got their ass kicked this week. Gold back down to 1914, still holding above critical support. I'll let you, because you're the chartist, talk about that critical support. Silver's being walloped, right? It's trading now, once again, like an industrial metal, not like a precious metal. And, I'm seeing, I was talking with you off air, and I'm seeing even newsletter writers, and this is how I know we're close to a bottom, because even newsletter writers now are starting to complain. It's not just one, it's several, about the markets and about the lack of liquidity. And they're spot on. If you're just trading silver, if you're just trading gold, if you're just a uranium bug, this was a boring to very ugly week for you. If you're a lithium bull, if you're into, digitizing the commodity supply chain, we talked about MineHub last week. It was up over 40% this past week. If you're into some of those plays, it was a pretty interesting week. And so there's more than one way to make money, folks. And I keep trying to preach, not to the choir, but to the people that aren't a part of the choir, that maybe are just gold bugs or just uranium bugs or just silver bugs, whatever it is. Look, Bitcoin may go to the moon. Silver, the solar panel shortage may really materialize one day. World War III could break out and gold could go to $7,000. But if none of those things happen, there's still ways to make money, folks. It hasn't just been on our end of it, Patriot, which, I should know you also got in at a pretty damn good attractive point, by the way, Nick. I know what you're sitting on.
For the record, I turned down the 16 cents. I was offered.
Got in at 34. You're all right. No complaints there, sir. But there's been other plays, right? I mean, I don't want to talk about them on here because they some of them are relatively recent here for subscribers, but they haven't been all winners because it's been a market where, somebody had a stat that 75% of TSX Venture companies are at 52-week lows, not just share price, but volume. So that's very real pain for the majority of the venture exchange. But within that, there have been opportunities, and man, there's also a lot of opportunities to set up for a second half that I think is going to be profitable, exciting. There's a lot of compelling valuations out there that I think if you really consider yourself a contrarian, and remember, folks, that shouldn't be the popular thing to do. That's not what a contrarian means. You should really be positioning, and I'm talking my own book here, in the copper space, in the uranium space. I'm comfortable with my gold exposure. I'm not adding to that right now, but that's because I'm comfortable with my gold and silver exposure. There's a lot of opportunities out there right now. And even in the lithium space where, a lot of the, for example, the James Bay plays, those haven't pulled back despite, the recent forest fires. They've actually held up really, really well. Patriot actually made, or came close to new 52-week highs. It did it on the U.S. side, couldn't quite break through on the Canadian side, but that despite, the fact that the fires are still going and we haven't got the amount of rain out there to really jumpstart the exploration season the way it will in the next week or two, hopefully. But more than one way to skin a cat, more than one way to make money out there. It's time to start thinking outside the box, people that are supposed to be giving the advice on this stuff. And then that includes us, right?
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know what to talk about. A couple
Let's
of
talk
things.
gold.
I was going to say, you asked about gold, and a little teaser. We'll have someone on this podcast next week who spends time exclusively in the precious metal space. So we can ask him about technical levels and sentiment and volume and gold stocks catching a bid and all that sort of stuff. But
big baseball fan that guy is, by the way, and we'll let him on despite the fact that he is not a Cubs fan. He's still allowed, and he's a friend of the show, so he's coming on. I will not be here next week, everyone. I will be at Wrigley. I'm celebrating. We have a family reunion in Chicago every year that the boys and the wife and I go to, so annual pilgrimage to Wrigley is required. But that gentleman will be here next week, so tune in.
Yes, and it will be 100% precious metals. So, I mean, gold's at the at the level of support. It needs to be considered a buy, right? I've been saying it's time to buy the dips in gold, and 1930, 1935 was that level. We've sort of a little bit below that now, but not on a weekly or monthly basis. So we'll be really interested to see how gold ends the week here, and how it ends the month. But in a very straightforward way, I was buying more gold today in my brokerage account,
Yep.
actual gold, GLD, or don't do what I do, DGP, for example. That's like a leveraged gold fund. But, I think gold is cheap, and gold volatility is very much subdued. I think that longer term bond yields are starting to weaken, pricing in this economic slowdown that's still going to come. The 30-year yield started to break down a little bit. The 10-year yield didn't get back up to where it was a couple of weeks ago. Let me just tell you so I get it right for posterity. Back on May 29th, the 10-year yield was at 3.86%, and it failed to get back up there. It failed at 3.85% the second week of June, and now it's making lower highs, currently at 3.8%. And so the 10-year yield is coming down a little bit, and gold has obviously come down along with it. I don't think that gold sell-off is sustainable. I truly think that you're going to get economic growth closer to 0 or 1% when the GDP number comes out on July 27th. And you're already seeing official recession in Germany and the Eurozone, for example. And so I think this is a good place to enter gold. I'll give you a caveat. If we do break down below that 1930 on the weekly or monthly basis, I mean, you could drop like a stone for a bit. To like the, I don't know, 1820-ish sort of level, 1815. But there's pretty strong support there. I don't envision that happening, but that's what the chart says. I think these yields will continue to slide down, and gold will catch a bid. And as far as, finding other things, there's always a bull market somewhere, is the saying, right? And if you do, you got to put in the work, is what a lot of people don't like to do. Like, I had a plastic recycling company, of all things, that was bringing their first plant online. No other really process to recycle polypropylene. And we started buying that around, $6 and change late last year, with a catalyst ahead that they were going to bring their first plant online, and then several more after that. Well, delays, obviously, supply chain, et cetera. It finally came online this week and broke out above $10. So, that's not bad work, $6 to $10 in a couple of months if you can get it. So,
in a boring summer.
Yeah.
I like it. Any thoughts on silver? Other than clearly it's trading as an industrial metal again, and the solar panel shortage hasn't materialized yet. And
the solar thing is funny, and I never understood that, man. Like, I spent a lot of time on solar. I got into this whole investing thing in clean tech, and have looked at a lot of different panel technologies, et cetera. Watched them evolve.
You were one of the first to call out solar roads.
That's right. We still don't have those damn solar roads. And every time I see, I won't name names, but every time I see people, talking about solar and silver, it's like, wait, that's the thing? Like, we're hanging our silver hopes on solar panels? Like, that's not the right way to be going about solar. It's sort of a bit esoteric and idiosyncratic. But anyway, silver is cheap as well. I think, despite its, and the industrial side of it has been sold off to the point now that it's oversold. And I've been buying not the physical silver, but I've been buying the miners. The small miners are really cheap, man. Like, just pick a real liquid one. What do I see every day that's among the most traded stocks on the TSXV? Like Abra Plata, for example, trades a ton of shares, is super cheap, has a really high quality, high grade deposit. And, full disclosure, I'm a shareholder, but that thing's been sold down well below 30 some cents. If you're a long-term believer in the silver thesis, if you think silver is undervalued right now, as I do, and if you think silver stocks have been sold off too far, then there's a place in your portfolio for some of these things.
Yes, and yes. And I'll give you a free name. And full disclosure, I'm not a shareholder yet, but I really like the CEO. I really like the technical team. I really like the asset. I think it's ripe for consolidation with the major neighbor right next door. And man, it's been beaten up along with the rest of the silver juniors. That's a Dolly Varden
I was
silver.
going to guess.
Yeah, ticker symbol DV, down to 63 cents. Look, can it go to 60? Can it go to 55? Of course it can. Will it matter in 9 to 12 months? Probably not, because that's a stock that was headed to $2 if silver was able to break through that 26, 27 level in a convincing fashion and head to 30. When moon, right? That's the question that everybody asks on everything, right? Whether it's Patriot, whether it's Lithium, whether it's Bitcoin. We got to talk Bitcoin in a second. But Dolly Varden silver is in excellent speculation on aggressive exploration. I think they're in the midst of a 45,000 meter exploration drill program, not mostly infill, not looking for little 50-meter extensions, true exploration. Credit to Sean Kun and his team for taking this market and saying, we don't care. We raised the capital. We have the technical team. We believe in the land package. We believe in the silver space. We're going to prove it up right now. You could re-rate it later whenever y'all catch up. Kudos to that team and looking real hard, both personally and in one of my services here soon.
I looked too. I was going to ask you if I can guess what it was, and I would have guessed it, Dolly Varden for sure. How high was it? Like 4 months ago or 5 months ago? Was it over
believe,
$1?
well, 115 if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And we could look it up here real quick just to be factual. To be factual. But
I could do it.
See,
Bet you I'm faster. 124.
There you go. Good job, sir. You'll have to teach me your magic one day, Nick. So anyhow, Dolly Varden silver, I think, is a heck of a speculation. Let's start Bitcoin. Despite the fact that the overall indices, and I don't know if you have new commentary to add on the overall indices. I think, on my end of it, my take is the same as it's been for the past.
Same.
Okay, so we'll just skip over it. It's going to keep, earnings are going to keep missing. Some companies are going to outperform. If the 7 companies that make up 54% of the major, exchange end up for some reason outperforming, it's going to boost things up. If not, everything's going to continue lower, and there's going to be earnings misses and a acknowledgement of the recession in the next couple of months as the data goes. Is that all accurate, Nick?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So there's your major indices. Take Bitcoin, though. Bitcoin's looking all right. Bitcoin's winking. Bitcoin got some lip fillers. Bitcoin got some hair extensions. Bitcoin did the lashes. Bitcoin upgraded the shoe game. The bottoms look red. I don't know if they are, but they look red. Bitcoin's up over 30,000 right now. I don't care how much Bitcoin winks at me. I'm not ready to take it out yet, but it's performing real well right now. It's looking all right.
Yeah, it's all right.
You're not impressed by the red bottoms on Bitcoin?
No. Gosh, look, it got to 30,000. I'm looking at the chart. That's why I'm not looking at you. Back in April, right? And I was telling you back in April, like, this is gonna break down. It's not gonna break out much north of 30,000. And what happened? It got to, I don't know, 31.29. It looks like $31,029 in April. Just a little wick of a candle, and then boop, it went right back down to 24,000 over the next 2 months. I'm not sure why it's catching a bid now. I mean, you've got a little bit of tech fervor with this AI stuff. You certainly haven't had, the regulatory stuff go in its favor, given that the SEC is out here suing everybody. Binance and Coinbase. I get that, Bitcoin is quasi-regulated a tiny bit, and it's been designated a commodity, but the chart doesn't say that it's going to break out. I mean, it got to 30,000 in a hurry. It shied right back away. Look, it's already back down below 30,000. It's really a liquidity type of investment as well. This is something Lynn Alden has talked about a lot. When you've got excess liquidity in the system, that it finds its way into Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's a really good barometer of that liquidity. Well, there's not a lot of liquidity out there right now. Nope. The values have been down in the market. It's summertime. M2 money supply is down. The Treasury's still got to refill their coffers. We got these student loans coming up here in September. I'm not sure what this little Bitcoin thing is here, but if I were a betting man, I think you got a chance to buy it closer to 20,000 again before 40,000, for example.
So the red bottoms might be getting returned, huh? Don't scuff them up, girl. Keep that receipt.
It was a Brazilian butt lift, it was. think it's leaking some cement.
Those aren't aging well, by the way, y'all. I'm old enough to have seen them when they first got here, and I'm just old enough now to see them a decade later. And squats in, y'all. You don't need to do all that. No judgments here, though. No judgments here.
Again, let me cover my tail. I own Bitcoin. It's not like I don't have a dog in the fight. I mean, I own Bitcoin, and I would buy more if it got below 20,000. I've been saying 15,000. I'd like to get to a whole coin. I've said that as well, but I don't see that in this sort of macro environment. And I think Bitcoin's overbought here.
I like it. We talked about the Fed counterfeiting money and the U.S. counterfeiting money, and we talked about how Flint still doesn't have clean drinking water. And you mentioned the SEC suing everybody, so I thought it was interesting to me that the SEC fined J.P. Morgan for deleting 47 million emails. Now, this comes out a week or two after J.P. Morgan settled with some of Jeffrey Epstein's victims. And again, my brain is weird. You kind of know it thinks in a kind of goofy way and makes connections, sometimes where there are none, but sometimes it makes connections that actually turn out to be true. And people are like, what in the heck were you thinking when you made that connection? But am I supposed to think it was a total coincidence that they settled with the Epstein victims like a week or two ago? It kept that hush. And then over here, 47 million emails went missing, and the SEC is just going to fine them for it. Like, how long are we supposed to just go on and keep our head in the sand about this Epstein thing?
I think forever. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to release the flight logs. Even the government is now at it, and J.P. Morgan's giving it back to the Bahamian government, or that's where it was, right, in the Bahamas. Anyway, wherever the island was, the J.P. Morgan's giving it right back to the government, saying you guys are the ones that turned a blind eye to this. You knew he was there, and maybe not what was going on, but if we're complicit, you're complicit. So anyway, I haven't dug too deep into the most recent settlement by J.P. Morgan, but there's certainly a reason they're settling. There's a reason that the Just
You don't
Staley's...
think they're just compassionate to the victims because they had nothing to do with it?
No, I don't. And yeah, clearly the government doesn't want you to know the full extent of what was going on there. And we've talked about this a lot, and Rudy Havenstein is back on Twitter, by the way, too, and
one of the best follows on Twitter. Everybody, I love you some Rudy.
He's never given up the good fight. Yeah, he fights the good fight. He's always posting the stuff, and look, everybody was involved. I mean, if not involved, certainly adjacent to or tangential to. Given all the photos we've seen with the, Clintons and Trumps and Summers and, Israeli prime ministers or whatever it was. And so anyway, good luck getting to the bottom of that. But it seems like these banks were clearly involved in some capacity. And, let's not forget, I've told you that since I've had kids, I've gotten off my soapbox a little bit when it comes to
the politics.
And then the banking stuff. But look, banks are always doing shady ass shit, man. What do you think the Swiss banks are doing for terrorist organizations and drug cartels? HSBC was caught red-handed, laundering money for drug cartels. These banks are, notorious for doing that stuff, and not just for managing and facilitating the money of criminals, but also for manipulating stuff. I mean, how many settlements have we seen for putting your thumb on the scale of precious metals trades, or for manipulating LIBOR, for example? I mean, these aren't nice people.
Yeah, there's a street legend by the name of Big Meech, right? Big part of hip hop culture. Him and his brother out of Atlanta, originated in Detroit. Anyway, in the 90s, they were just lavish. They were selling billions of dollars of cocaine in the streets, right? And they were doing it brilliantly. If you look at logistics, supply chains, and transport, all of that, and you just throw the legality of cocaine, right, out the window. The operation was a brilliant operation. They ended up getting arrested. Big Meech ends up getting 35 years. But there's a line in a freestyle I heard the other day that said, free Big Meech, who's been in for like 20 years now. Said Big Meech didn't sell more cocaine or drugs than Big Pharma, right? And we've talked often about how Big Pharma, like the Purdue family, just gets to write a check and skate off into the wind with the rest of their profits. It's a crazy system out here. The last thing that I'll say, railing and ranting, on our system is, did you read about the accounting error that accidentally sent an extra $6 billion to the Ukraine war and weaponry and support? An accounting error accident. Let me repeat that because we're so desensitized to this shit, right? That we're just like, yeah, and there's aliens in Vegas and all the other stuff, right? $6 billion in accounting errors were missed. But man, don't declare that Venmo on your IRS statement and let them catch that shit. And you are in trouble, folks. It's a crazy, crazy system we're living under right now, Nick.
Yeah, I didn't read the entire article because, like you say, so desensitized to it. But I saw it. You think to yourself, oh, what's $6 billion, a drop in the bucket over the, $1 trillion defense budget and the $33 trillion deficit or debt. So, yeah, and at some point, this is all going to come back to it, right? Back talking about gold and, resets and kicking cans. And, I think that's what lots of folks are worried about.
No accounting errors for mental health, no accounting errors for clean water in Flint, Michigan, no accounting errors for, all of the other things that maybe deserve an accounting error. It's funny how the accounting errors always end up being in favor of, the defense industry, the military industrial complex, politicians, their campaigns, and so on and so on and so on. Anyhow, back to the markets. I'll be out next week, but I'll definitely be watching the markets as I always do. What will you be watching for, Mr. Hodge? Anything in particular?
I don't think so. We're, in the slow days of summer, we're a month out from GDP. We just had a Fed meeting. No, there's not one thing I have my eye on in particular. The VIX is getting exceedingly low. It has much more upside than downside. You've still got, I think last week was, record call buying in the S&P, like all-time record high for volume. And it's the options that dictate that VIX. That's what the VIX is predicated on. And so I'm not sure how long the AI boom can last. And it's so funny. Like I mentioned the chart of how many mentions AI got in conference calls. And it's like, I was talking about this in a talk I gave to Foundational Profits members. Like 110 companies mentioned AI on their quarterly conference calls. So the S&P 500. You're telling me over 20% of the S&P 500 is focused on or working on artificial intelligence? No, come on, get out of here. It's same for like ESG was 2 years ago, and you can look at the same thing. You can look at a chart of ESG mentions, and it peaks in late 2021, and then it comes right back down. Like people aren't mentioning ESG on their conference calls anymore because they're mentioning AI. It's sort of the flavor of the week. Where was I going to go with that? God, I was going to say something cogent, and it slipped my mind. But anyway, it was that, FedEx was out with earnings this week, missed on all their business segments. FedEx Freight, it was down 18% from the quarter a year ago, and their guidance for earnings per share for the year, they put out at like 16 and change, and the street was expecting over $18 in earnings. So like not even close to what the street was expecting. And don't forget, this is the same FedEx that was warning just like, I don't know, 6 or 9 months ago that we were headed into a global recession, right? I mean,
and firing all their people.
Yeah, and they see all the global shipments and the commerce, et cetera. And so, and nonetheless, FedEx stock has been doing good as well. But again, I flipped on Bloomberg as I do when I heat up my lunch, and the FedEx earnings had just come out, and there was like 4 hosts who didn't know what to say. They were like, the one chick was like, I know it was a guy actually. He was like, I'm scanning the press release here, and I don't see any mention of AI. And it's like, I think that's the analysis we're getting on Bloomberg. Like you're just looking to see if they mentioned AI in their earnings report. And so, anyways, it's a bit humorous, and it's a bit thin. Not just on the volume, but on the, substantive backing of why these stocks have been going up. So anyway, the volatility, if I got to be watching one thing.
All right. I'll be eagerly watching the weather report in James Bay and all of Quebec, right? Obviously, we want the fires there to cease, not just for exploration in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada, but because we want, the fires to stop and things to get back to normal out there. So hopefully we get some rain out there. Hopefully we get an announcement, reinforcing the fact that it's an all clear for the companies that have announced, like Patriot, that it wasn't all clear. And I should say, as it relates to Patriot, when they made that announcement, they were pretty consistent, I thought, in their release and saying that, look, it's going to take a couple of weeks for us to ramp up and get back, to full exploration anyhow. So news on that front saying that the rain has made everything okay would be welcomed as a Patriot shareholder. As a shareholder of other James Bay plays, I would love to see that as well so they could get out with the summer. I think an exciting summer out of James Bay awaits us Lithium speculators and shareholders of the region. And what else I'll be watching? I'll be watching gold. I'm curious to see if it holds that support. I think it does. I think it really does. But, well, what I think ultimately won't matter. Supposed to remind you all to go to dailyprofitcycle.com/subscribe to leave all your comments. Never miss updates. Get everything straight to the inbox. And speaking of comments, Nick and I are kicking around an idea of potentially doing this less often. So we would have less therapy because that's what I need anyway, right? Is less therapy. So you'd probably end up with twice as long rants and raves from me. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing for y'all out there, but anyhow, leave your thoughts and comments on whether a every couple of week podcast or every month podcast would be something that is more appealing for you folks out there, or if you enjoy the timeliness of weekly commentary from Nick and I. We're also kicking some other ideas around in regards to the podcast that might make it exclusive to our paying subscribers for a week first. Being that they are paying subscribers of our other publications. So an incentive there to come on board on that front and kind of, pick our brains for your dollars. So that's it. That's all I got. Anything to add to that, Nick?
Well, we've now done more episodes than Seinfeld. So we're going to have to start thinking about, where this content is going to come from.
Hopefully we have more substance than Seinfeld did. The show about nothing, right? No knock on it. Hugely successful. It did it beautifully, obviously, and it obviously provided a lot of laughs to a lot of people, but very short on substance. Anyhow, I am Gerardo Del Real, along with Mr. Nick Hodge. This was the 224th episode of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. Kind out there, everybody. Have a great, great week. I'll see you in 2.
My heart will go on.
Hey there, you independent-minded investor. If you like this video, make sure to tell us so by clicking the like button below. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss another one. And share it with everyone you know on social media. You can also click the link in the description below to check out more information-packed videos just like this one. Thanks for watching.